And good afternoon. Right now at 5, the number of coronavirus cases across the Houston area is now up to 18. There are 6 in Fort Bend County, 6 in Harris County, 3 in the city of Houston, 3 in Montgomery County. Tonight we're learning more about those patients as county and city leaders intensify efforts to stop the spread of the virus. We've got live team coverage on the ever-changing developments, starting with Jason Miles. And Jason, health officials trying to figure out who those patients came in contact with. That's always the drill, isn't it?
Always, Lynn, and we learned a lot more about local cases here today, and officials also shared some new community recommendations. Take a look. They include canceling gatherings of 250 people or more and limiting nursing home visits. They also want you to telecommute to work if possible. Houston, Harris County, and Fort Bend County officials all speaking here today. All have declared public health emergencies over the last couple of days. They say all of the patients who've tested positive in our area are stable right now, including a woman who attended Rodeo Houston on Sunday. You may recall another patient who's a law enforcement officer up in Montgomery County also attended the rodeo. Neither was believed to be symptomatic at the time, but we're told the man is not being forthcoming about which tent he was in the barbecue cook-off, as health officials in multiple counties now investigate all of these cases.
We are doing the best that we can in a methodical manner to provide information as quickly as we can, but to ensure that information is reliable and accurate, but at the same time to make recommendations on how people can protect themselves.
Officials also explain why they're making all of these suggestions and why events are being canceled as a precaution. So many events now. Basically, they want to avoid any potential spike in the number of patients showing up to hospitals and elsewhere, which could potentially overwhelm our hospital system, which runs basically runs out of space or reaches near capacity as it is, especially during flu season. In addition to the woman with ties to the rodeo and the man, not to mention that, officials say one of the latest cases also has ties to a Mormon church up in the Spring area. They are in contact with a congregation there just to make sure anyone who may have come in contact with this patient also may need to self-quarantine as a precaution. But definitely the most curious part of today's news conference, or at least one of them, guys, was the fact that that patient up in Montgomery County who attended the rodeo is not being extremely forthcoming with information about exactly where he went on those rodeo grounds. Back to you.